This is Small is Beautiful, Economics as if People Mattered by E.F.Shucmacher. Now, this book is incredibly hard to summarize because it's not really one book. One book would have a thesis, a main point that it was trying to get across. Here is the main point. What this book really is a collection of essays. And each of those essays has its own mini-thesis, which all kind of come together into this rethinking of the way that we consider economics. And it's beautiful. I mean, the book is also like small and beautiful. I'm going to pull out just two of those theses from this book in order to give you a small taste of what it's about, but we're going to come back to other ideas in this one in future videos, including one about education. The first of those two theses is the value of work. Now, when you go to work at your job, one of the things that you are trying to optimize in that game is you are trying to get the most money for your hour. In other words, you're trying to get the most money for the least amount of work at the job. Taken to its logical conclusion, what that would mean is that eventually you are giving no time, or as close to no time as you could manage, to work and getting your money so that you can live and go about your business. And so in an ideal world, you kind of like optimize work out of the equation. You just don't go to work anymore. Wouldn't that be sweet? But the funny thing is, your employer is trying to optimize work out of the equation too, at the same time. When you go to work, you cost money. You have to be paid. That's an expense. And so wouldn't it be great if you could get more done with less hours of work by, say, employing robots or doing other things to cut out as many of those employable hours as possible? And so over here on this side, you've got your employer who is trying to optimize labor out of the equation. And you've got you, the employee, who is also trying to optimize labor out of the equation. Both of you, if you get what you want, are going to optimize labor out of existence. Now what's interesting is one of these chapters that E.F.Shucmacher goes into, he talks about Buddhist economics. Now in economics, whatever you're doing is always optimizing. When you optimize for money, you get certain results that are fairly predictable because you're optimizing purely for money. And that's not entirely wrong. Money has its uses. It's good stuff. Whenever you optimize for something, you are not optimizing for other things. Basically, you're just setting a priority. You're saying this above all else. This is the thing we're going to go for. Now, ideally, what that should always be is the good, capital G. You want human flourishing, and you don't want to miss anything that is incredibly important. Important meaning good. Goodness goes at the top. Now, money is really cool and useful because it can be traded for other things, which means it can be a filler. You can say, well, we don't really know exactly what the ultimate good in the universe is, but in the meantime, money, which is easy to trade for all the other things, is a really good stand-in. There are some points where this breaks down, though, and causes problems. For instance, in getting work out of the equation, because it turns out you need work. You need it to feel meaningful. You need it to live a decent life. And so when he goes into this chapter and talks about the optimizing problem, he says, okay, let's give it a different set of roots. Let's say that we're optimizing for some Buddhist principles. Let's create a Buddhist economics. In this chapter, E.F.Shucmacher describes how in Buddhism, work is considered to be in and of itself a good that you are optimizing for, a particular kind of work. He's looking for creative work that involves the soul. And so if you're not trying to optimize that out of the equation, how does it look? It's an interesting thought. He goes into a lot more detail, and I highly, highly recommend reading the book. The second idea is one that we've already talked about quite a bit, which is appropriate technology, meaning a technology which is appropriate for the specific time and place. Not too high-tech, not too primitive, but just right, kind of in the sweet spot. The rough idea of appropriate technology is that sometimes high-tech solutions are not the most appropriate for the time and place. And there's a lot of things that could influence that to say what is appropriate. One of them is expense. The technology example that we've used in a previous video was when we created the world's simplest forge out of clay and straw. Now, this forge was amazing because it's cheap. It's cheap, it's easy, it's functional. It does everything a normal forge does, and it does it for no cost. So for a beginning hobbyist who's first getting into blacksmithing, and you're not quite sure if you want to get into it completely and invest in $1,000 equipment to buy a full-sized anvil and a propane forge and all that stuff, then this is perfect. It's actually better technology than going all in for the upgrades. And so there's a lot of different situations that influence that, but in some cases, backwards is better. That key idea that you're optimizing always for one thing or another shows that there is a series of assumptions about value and about what is real and about what is good underlying everything. These assumptions of value at the root of economics, the questions about what is the highest good, what is this thing that we are striving for, what is the thing that we are optimizing toward, is where that subtitle comes from, Economics as if People Mattered. Because E.F.Shucmacher noticed that there were some things in our system and in our world which are not quite optimized right, where things that are too important get left by the wayside, and things that aren't important at all get prioritized. And his thoughts about this process and about the ideas underpinning our systems of belief and value are really, really good. Like really, really good. I highly recommend this book. Amazon link in the description below. This is one of those books that has channeled my thinking. It's given me new questions to ask, and in some ways that is more important than getting new answers. Because if you're asking the right questions, that is something. Anyway, I highly recommend this book. If you enjoyed this video or if you've read this book, please hit the like button below. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. We're interested in ancient arts and crafts and hands-on philosophy. Thank you very much.